Here we'll study a few sentences that come from Chapter 2 in order to give you a preview of some of the grammatical expressions and also the vocabulary that you'll see in this chapter. Our first sentence ends with the verb sung, which we know to be the honorific verb for to speak or to say. We might therefore assume that what comes before this is something that somebody said. Let's look at what comes before it. We have a noun and a tongue, so two nouns in a row, a third case marker, a noun, and here's a verbal phrase that I'll explain in a minute, ending with a yin. So it's a good guess that this is what the person said. And it could have continued, what he said or she said could have come from before, it could have started before this example, but this is an example of a full statement here. So the first thing we'll look at is this verb expression at the end, sakba yin. So this is a quotation of someone's speech. This is biographical literature in which people are speaking to each other. And so you'll see some phrases that come from colloquial Tibetan. If you know a bit of colloquial Tibetan, you'll know that sakba yin is what comes at the end of a phrase that says, I have verbed. That comes at the end of a sentence. If you've only studied classical Tibetan, you may not have seen this yet. You may know yin as a verb that takes the A is B structure that we learned last semester. In this case, this is not a case of the A is B classical Tibetan structure, but rather of a colloquial type of speech. The verb sakba, sak, is the past tense of to accumulate, of the verb to accumulate. And so this is a person saying, I have accumulated something, what comes before it. So what comes before it is this noun, sins or misdeeds. And then we have a third case particle here, which the third case in some cases could be the agent, right? Or it could be a phrase that means due to something or because of something. And so let's investigate what the phrase means to figure out which one of those it might be. So this is magic, or in the case of this story, black magic. And this is hailstorms. And so we have black magic and hailstorms. So somebody is saying, somebody has accumulated misdeeds by means of, so that makes the most sense in terms of this third case marker, by means of black magic and casting hailstorms. This is the word for hailstorms, but it's in this case shortcut for the practice of knowing how to cast hailstorms. So what's missing right here at the beginning is the subject, I. And it could be someone else. You don't know for sure that this is necessarily in the first person, but in the context of this reading, you will understand that this is Milarepa saying that, Milarepa saying, so there's the last verb, he said, I have accumulated misdeeds through the practice of black magic and casting hailstorms. So I is omitted from the sentence, and the phrase the practice of is omitted, but in English we have to add those in. Here's another short sentence. Again, we'll start by looking at the verb. We see song, which is the past tense of to go, or in this case to become. So somebody went somewhere or became something. We'll notice that we have a third case marker right here. And we'll notice a case marker here, the ra, appended to the de, which, so in that place, or at there, something happened. So then it's just a question of vocabulary mainly. So siber means to be drunk, to get drunk. So somebody became drunk, or went drunk, right? And then we have the verb, the past tense of the verb to drink. So we can infer by the meaning that this third case marker would mean something like, because of drinking, somebody became drunk, or by means of drinking, someone became drunk. And then the vocabulary here is lots of chang mangbo. This is an adjective, and this chang is beer, fermented barley beer. So somebody became drunk by drinking lots of beer, and then this is in that place. Somebody became drunk by drinking lots of beer in that place, and what's omitted is the subject, which in the context, you'll know is he. Here's a slightly longer sentence. Let's start by looking for some particles and grammatical markers that can help us break it into smaller chunks. So first we see this third case marker. We see a sixth case marker right here. We see a third case marker here, a continuative particle here. And then next maybe we'll look for the verbs. We see longchung right here. This is verb chung is something you can write in your notes as an expression that means something like verb to happen, verb emerged or verb happened. In the last slide we saw verb song, which is a way of saying that something happened in the past. It occurred that a verb happened in the past. Chung is a little bit like this. We see two verbs here also. Nye shin puba. So nye is a verb that you'll find in the dictionary in another form. This is an unusual spelling for this verb. You'll find it in the dictionary spelled like this, and it means to smooth or rub something. And buba, this verb means to call out. So just to take this verbal phrase right here, we have two verbs joined by a shin. Two verbs joined by a shin means while the first verb happened, the second verb then happened. So while rubbing or smoothing or calming and calling out. So another thing you might write in your notes is the expression verb shin verb. Another 3 common verbal expressions you've learned so far here. Then we can look at what comes before the ki as a unit, and we can look at this expression before this pair of verbs as a unit. So you know this vocabulary. Ame lakba is mother's hands. And here you may know this also. So nge is we, and then this is brother and sister, the two. So this is an appositional phrase. So we, brother and sister, the two. In other words, in English, the two of us, the brother and sister, did something. So what did we do? Let's just read up until this third case marker. We rubbed mother's hands while calling out to her. So we two, brother and sister, rubbed mother's hands, that's this part, while calling out to her. And then let's look at the next section. Here is the word to faint or to become unconscious. And this means she woke up. So Sangye, the Buddha, is the same word, to awaken. So she woke up from her faint. And here's the continuative that joins two phrases. Sometimes it's like a semicolon in English. So mother woke up from her faint and got up, longchung, meaning she stood up. So then how do you explain this third case? This is then puts the whole phrase that comes before this third case into relationship with what comes after it. And it's by means of or because of relationship. So because we two, brother and sister, rubbed mother's hands and called out to her, and then you read from there forward, she woke up from her faint and she got up, she stood up. Let's start this longer sentence by going just up to the she, which ends in a verb, the past tense of to do, which sometimes is a verb that can also mean to say. And we'll see that we have at the beginning a third case I, an agent. So I said, and then it helps us that we have this terminating particle right here after the final verb there to know that this is what he said in quotation marks in between I and said. So I said, I will do the work or the action, lay, that is whatever mother wishes. So it's the action that mother wishes, and when you have the kong here, this interrogative particle or indefinite sort of particle that means like whatever is wished for or wherever someone has gone. That's how you get whatever mother wishes. So I will do that. Next we have mother said. So nare is a non-honorific expression to mean to say. So the mother in the story always takes non-honorific verbs. And so then at the end of this sentence, you can see also the non-honorific to say. So mother said, and everything between nare and the end, ser, is what mother said. So let's look at how to break down the long sentence that is her speech. If we look, maybe we can start at the beginning because there's some familiar vocabulary and it can help to identify chunks of nouns especially. So here we have what we've seen before, the three magic curses and hailstorms. Here we have an expert. Tarchinpa is an expert, and Tarchinpa cheek is like an expert. Then we have the past tense of to study, followed by ne. So here's our verb ne. So having studied to become an expert, or as an expert of the three magic curses and hailstorms, then what do we see that's familiar coming after that? We have uncle and aunt in the third case. And skipping ahead a little bit, we have the neighbors and powerful households. So that's two nouns, but meaning the people from his country, from his region, the neighbors and powerful households. Then that's modified by a sixth case phrase of what comes before it. So it's the neighbors and the powerful households who are headed up by or led by uncle and aunt. So we've got that phrase. We can skip ahead now to this phrase right here, ending with kun, which means all. So all these right here, all these people, the senders of misdeeds. So dong means to send or to inflict. So the inflictors, and a verb ken. Verb ken is a person who is skilled at verbing. So the senders or inflictors of misdeeds or evil on, and this is rangre mame, is our family or us. And then that's in relationship these are the senders, the neighbors and wealthy households who are headed up by the aunt and the uncle. These are all of those senders of misdeeds to us, right? And then the final phrase, it would be a little difficult for you to know. This is an idiomatic expression right here that is to cut off in 9 generations, cut off at the root for 9 generations, the lineage of those people. So this is a way of, she wants Milarepa to cut off the lineage of all of those evil people for 9 generations forthcoming. So not just to kill them, but to kill everyone who comes forth from in their lineage for 9 generations. So that's an especially malicious type of curse. And then the cheek here, cheek has various meanings. It can mean one. It can help make a verb into an imperative, but you can see it's following a noun here. So it's often used in speech, in colloquial speech, to mean. It kind of actually means, like in English, like we say like. It has no real significant meaning, but it means some or a, or do a bit of that. So here's the main verb. This is what the mother says, I want. This means she wants. So the mother, all the way up here, said that I want you to cut off the lineage for 9 generations at the root, tsawa. And whose lineage? I want you to cut off the lineage at the root for 9 generations, all those senders or inflictors of evil on us, i.e., the householders and rich families who are headed up by uncle and aunt. And then when are you going to do that? You're going to do that having studied to become an expert in all 3 of those kinds of magic. So that's a long and tricky sentence, but that's what Tibetan sentences are like. Let's break this sentence down similarly by looking for some of the particles that come after verbs in particular. So, but before that, reading from the beginning, we can just take note of a few case markers. A 6th case, here's a ne, a 5th case. Here's a verbal continuative particle, and here's another verbal continuative particle. Skimming along, we see a 3rd case, a 6th case, another 3rd case, 6th case, here's a 3rd case marker, 3rd case marker, and then we see that this sentence ends with the non-honorific verb to speak. So somebody, not Milarepa, somebody else non-honorific, and usually in this story it's often his mother, is saying something in this sentence. So let's go back to the beginning. Oh, we missed a 3rd case right here. So maybe we can start, first of all, just to go up to the first continuative and consider that our first phrase. So this is pretty short. We can just start with the beginning agent, mother, then go down to the verb, caught or grasped. From my hand. It sounds a bit odd in English to have this in the 5th case, but mother caught me, maybe in English we would say mother caught me by my hand or from my hands. This is the phrase, my hands. And then, so what verb phrase comes after that? This one right here, she grasped it, chang chang che. So che, again, is a past tense marker, and here's 2 verbs repeated. That means she grasped. Chang chang is she held onto it, grasped it over and over. She did it, more than once. So then we have the whole phrase up to the first shing. So mother grasped my hand or mother grabbed my hand, say, sung, and grasped it again and again. Now what comes next? Where should we break up the phrase next? So we can do these, we can go up to the she right here. This phrase marker is called the she. So this ends with the third case, ki. So some vocabulary we look for this phrase, a teary face. So chima is teary. This is in the third case. So with a teary face and with a voice that's filled with tears or full of sobs. So that's this phrase right here, with a teary face and a voice full of sobs. And then we might guess right here that she's going to say something. And here we have the first person we, so we can think that makes sense, that's where the saying would end. And the saying would end right there. So we, mother and daughter, uchak mame. Let's go now to the next third case. So we see the yin, and we can say, look what comes before that verb. So black magic of suffering. This is the verb to meet, tuk. Black magic which, the sixth case. The black magic that meets the suffering of our family. Let's call this our family, us. So it is, something is, the subject is omitted, and let's just say this. In the context you would know that we're talking about this. This is the black magic of our family's suffering. And therefore, you, with diligence, here's the verbal phrase, verbal imperative, keishok, must, this is a imperative marker, must practice. So again, this is the third case. How must you practice? You must practice with diligence. So putting it all together again, mother caught my hand and grasped it over and over again, her face teary and her voice filled with tears, and she said, and here's what she said, something like, this is the black magic of our family's suffering, and so, or because of that, right, you must practice with diligence. We'll end with a short and easy one. This one we can even start from the beginning, seeing the expression then. Then we can go down to the end and take a look at the verb, jebar chin. Chin is the past tense of to go, and the phrase verb bar chin is to go in order to do some verb, right? So this is the verb to meet. So somebody went to meet somebody. And then we can see the agent right here marked in the third case. Nge nam is we with the plural marker nam. So we went to meet him.